which are the changes that we made in discussions last time. And I think I caught them all, but if I didn't, please let me know. And then there are some new things highlighted in green that we've not discussed before that have come up since the last meeting. On the first page, line 16, we've added a priority to develop a schedule of fixed asset replacement with associated costs by, with a start date of May 1st, 2013 or before, and finish date of September 1st. Then the other green things come from IT in 1.8, second page on line 31. We have libraries that would like to have self-check added. Exactly what that looks like is still under discussion, but we're proposing that we add self-check capability at Central, Petaluma, and Rincon Valley. They're the next three busiest libraries after Rohnert and Sebastopol. Sonoma being a little down the list in terms of volume. The question that we have to decide in consultation with them is whether we're going to put in one self-check that's simply for backup or whether we're going to put in 3 or more. So, and if the staff has to be willing to go to an all self-check model if we put in more than one self-check machine. Then we have to upgrade all our computers, public and staff, to Microsoft Office 2010. That's a $31,000 cost. And that would happen this spring. No, it would happen during the next fiscal year, I'm sorry. Same thing for coming up with a plan on moving to a new Windows platform operating system, because we're still on Windows XP.
Which one would we move to?
Well, that's a subject of debate.
Not the new one.
That's a subject of debate.
Oh, okay.
That's a subject of debate.
I haven't asked for comments from the, all right.
From the peanut gallery. That's the peanut gallery.
From the public. The cost of $31,000, it doesn't say where that funding might
It would
come.
come from the software budget.
Okay.
And then the rest are the yellow highlights that I want to make sure I caught everything and that it's what you talked about last time. This will be on the agenda to finalize next time.
Any commission questions, comments?
Sandy, how's that self-check working? There was so many problems with it a while back.
It's working fine, and the reason we're proposing expanding it is the staff at those libraries want it.
Okay, because I remember not so long ago, people would say, get rid of this, it's terrible.
It's
And
working.
now they're saying, no, we want it.
Right. It's
Yes, if
working
you wait long
terrific
enough,
in
things change.
Sebastopol, it's working really smoothly.
Great, that's wonderful.
Wonderful.
And Sonoma, it's fabulous.
Okay.
So could we take and is it possible to take an approach where you do a combination and you start with one self-check station to introduce it to the library community and not go fell swoop to all of it?
Well, that's what I'm going to give the staff at each of the libraries the choice.
Because in my mind, I'm sort of thinking like Safeway, where they have some self-checkouts
like-
and some tellers.
The
you know,
problem
or
is
checkers.
that
So you have
everybody with experience tells you what happens is if you put in a bunch of self-checks and you still have staff doing self-checks, people aren't going to want to hurt the staff's feelings and they're going to go over there.
Okay.
You either have to go, one, let them get used to it, and then, but know that only a few people are going to use it.
Okay.
Or you've got to go
all the way.
all the way.
And
All right.
when you work with Petaluma and mention these choices to them, does that mean we hold off on the circ deck?
No,
desk?
no,
Okay.
they're still doing the circ desk.
Okay.
One thing I do want to mention, when I went to Roanoke Park, is I tried the system. And it seemed to me, and I know this is probably opening up old discussions, but it seemed to me it wasn't too intuitive. and that could be, the signage could be improved on it. And that's
People
the
don't
library.
read the signage. We've had a
Yeah.
variety of signage there.
Yeah. Well, it didn't seem too intuitive to me, and I'm fairly technical. So, I mean, I'm just saying, that's probably bringing up old.
Yes,
By the look
thank
on your
you.
face, it's bringing up old. So I just wanted to mention that.
And when we're talking about the self-check, are we including those security gates, or
We
is that a
still haven't,
separate issue?
we're dealing with that on a separate track.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions from the commission?
There was one, when I visited the library, and they mentioned that there was a question, maybe that's what you're talking about, security gates of the inner library
Yeah,
loan?
that's,
That's the, okay.
you
Don't
don't
bring
want to
it
go
up.
there.
Don't go there. I'm happy not to go.
So are you calling for questions about the document or self?
Yes.
Okay. So I just, when you have in parentheses, no cost,
Uh-huh.
could you, what does that mean? I mean,
That means that we're not asking for any money from the budget.
okay, so it's just staff time that is the cost?
Right.
Okay.
Anybody else? I'm looking. Go ahead.
I would, it's not specifically related to this document, but since we're talking about focus and finish, one of the conversations that our chair and I had the other night had to do with, this is a focus and finish and direction to library staff, but the suggestion came up that maybe the commission wants to set some goals for itself, not just for management, but that the commission might want to set one or two goals for the year, sort of our own focus and finish, if you will. Because this, I mean, the focus and finish is great for, okay, management, here's what the priorities are, here's what we want you to do, but what are our goals as a commission? Which was one of the things we discussed. We don't have to discuss it, I mean, I guess we don't have to resolve that right this minute, but I just thought I'd bring it up during a focus and finish discussion to say that maybe we want to consider setting annual commission goals as opposed to library management goals.
Do we have a strategic planning session scheduled, or is it just an idea somewhere?
No, what you all said you wanted to do was to do the information gathering for strategic planning during this upcoming year, so that you're then prepared to move on the planning itself.
Okay, I'm just thinking, I agree with you, Julian. I think it would be good within the context of a strategic plan to have
Right.
specific goals for us.
But I'm actually thinking, taking a step back further, since I don't believe any commission has ever sort of done that or come up with their own annual goals. Maybe we want to start with, figuring out what that means and what the procedure for the commission to do that is going to be, and if it's going to be different than the procedures for just going over the focus and finish that's presented to us by library management, and how it's all going to work. I mean, if we give ourselves a structure, maybe we can, I don't know.
Well, that does seem to me like it might be part of a strategic planning
That's,
process.
that's my experience. That's how it
Okay.
works best. But if we don't have anything like a strategic planning session, on a calendar or anything, then I don't know how long we want to wait for that.
Well, I'm confused about your use of the word strategic planning. Are you talking about the strategic plan or us planning strategically?
No, the
Oh, okay.
first,
All
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But, so in the strategic plan, you think the commission would have annual goals set?
I would like to think so, yeah.
Okay.
Or we could set a process for doing that. We could come up with annual goals for the first year and a process for continuing that process.
So how do people suggest we go with that idea at this point?
Can we schedule what has to happen before we actually schedule a strategic planning session?
The information gathering for the strategic planning,
Which is in the.
which
focus
is
and
what we're
finish.
talking about doing this upcoming year.
Okay.
So is that something that we could
So
talk
we're a
about a
year
little
away?
bit more in depth at our April meeting?
Talk about what?
The process of the planning the strategic planning process and what it entails. I know you have some information you're asking for some money for it, but
Well, I thought the last time, it was my understanding that last meeting, you all agreed that you wanted to do the information gathering part of the strategic planning during the upcoming year, partially because it could be that the governing board and governing structure will change completely, so that then the new group or this group or whatever group
Right.
would have the information to move ahead.
In April, I think what I hear, Helena, and what would be nice for me is to have a very short memo that says, here's how a strategic plan is done. Number one, information gathering. Number two, you do this. Number three,
Could I
you
do that I don't want to rebuff you.
Right.
I'll be happy to do it for the May meeting, but if
Okay.
you remember, I have several
Right.
things you've already asked me for the
That's
April
fine.
meeting.
Well, and
May would
also-
be
And
fine,
it's just
too.
2 weeks away.
Which
Yep.
reminds me
Fine.
that in terms of, for the April meeting, we have currently planned to have a closed session for evaluation of the director. And I'm wondering, that often packs a meeting. Do we want to have a special session for evaluation of the director sometime after April 8th? So that we don't bring into the structure of the budget, the meeting on April 8th, to take an hour and a half off or something for the,
But most of what you're going to be doing at the April meeting is signing off on things that you've discussed the last 2 meetings, which should be pretty pro forma.
okay, good. All
Which
right.
is why I thought you could do it then.
I just would
well,
like to hear this.
and I'm also willing to have a separate special meeting too. I think that's something you could decide to.
Well, I think we need to decide it soon, so I'll ask you at the end of the meeting, so you can mull. All right, any other things about focus and finish? Do we feel this is okay to proceed? I noticed that Mike at the JPA meeting asked for thumbs up. Do people sort
The
of
best
agree?
question to ask is, does anybody disagree?
Does anybody disagree? Thank you. All right, any comments from the public?
There is no public.
There isn't, well, but I still have to ask. And
Yeah.
employees are the public also.
That's true.
Uh,
He says 2007.
So I do have just one question. I think it looks fine, except I'm a little, where you have start date in progress, it's kind of nebulous. But I think there was, I wondered how the policies were coming. If it was possible, I think we were asking, I had requested that maybe an intern. It seemed like everybody thought it
Staff
was a
is
good idea.
working on, we
Okay.
identified the ones that that an intern might be able to help with, where it would be productive.
Okay,
And so staff took that list, and we haven't.
okay. I just wanted to check in. Thanks.
All right, preliminary, on to the next item, preliminary budget.
There is some discussion going on between Don and Mark, and they're following up to see if indeed the projections for redevelopment might be slightly higher by a couple of $100,000. And we'll know more about that for the April meeting. Some of the changes that were proposed in here were for were to implement the tentative agreement, so those would go away. So, the proposed contractual services would be to pay for continued video recording, and we will have a more in-depth report on video recording for the April 8th meeting. Rebecca's working on options for indexing. We are asking under software costs to add $31,000 to fund the upgrade to Microsoft Office, plus $2,000 for the purchase of the software we need for Horizon to make it work with the Discover and Go museum program. The next,
I'm sorry, what line was that? I'm trying to quickly find.
6889 software under category services and supplies.
Thank you.
And that's all, those are the only changes from the last version. except the things that are in the special revenue funds. And there we are proposing using some of those undesignated system-wide funds for the strategic planning at $25,000 and the cost and compensation, salary and compensation classification study. Those were back in the earlier document that you saw for 13-14.
I have a concern in light of what our closed session just revealed, that 115,000 is maybe not going to be sufficient for our legal services, given what we
I
spent
think-
this year.
I think it will, because what we're spending this year includes all the money for the PERB board at about 30 to, or even, is that 30,000, between 30 and 40,000 for that process. So I think you've got enough in there,
But you'll alert us if we don't.
certainly.
Okay.
And in terms of, I guess my other concern for the legal services, do we have in that 115, are we also adding in county council services for
Yes.
when the JPA, we need their time and attention on that document?
We assume that there would be money in there too.
Okay.
We'll watch it, but I think so far, since that discussion we had back in, when was it, December or November, about the increase in legal fees, they've dropped off substantially because it's not taking as much time and the PERB issue is resolved.
And why is there a 23% increase, line 6630, in accounting and audit?
So we'd have enough money, that was just to make sure we had enough money if we go out and make the decision to hire a new firm.
Okay.
I think we need to, is it time for us to switch firms?
When?
Remember, could we put that on the agenda for April?
Sure.
Yes. We need
The discussion about how we're going to go about it.
Okay.
We're not required to change firms. And if you remember, there's some downsides to having a brand-new fiscal chief financial officer and a new firm.
Other comments, questions from the commission? Looks fine.
Since our books and materials is staying stagnant in the real world, what does that mean in terms of an actual reduction? Like the cost of books have gone up, how much while our budget
We'll have to
hasn't?
come back with that.
Okay. So it's good ammunition to have and know those things.
Ammunition.
So you're going to make the changes because of the tentative agreement?
No, they're not. We're taking them out because we
Right,
don't have.
that's what I meant,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, I'm sorry.
Other questions? How about this side of the table? Anything? Tom? No? Okay. Public comment? Next item. Now we move into the special commission meeting. So formally closing the budget and planning workshop number 2 and moving into the special commission meeting is now called to order. Action items. First one is the budget policy.
I had a cryptic note at the end of the draft that when I got ready to do all this, I couldn't understand. Did somebody want something added to the budget policy that I didn't add?
What was your note?
Well, I don't remember what the note was. I didn't bring it with me. Wait, I do have it with me. Just a minute. Never mind. Long-term liabilities in financial planning is is what my note says.
I think that's, long-term liabilities was probably referring to the
Yeah.
unfunded,
Right.
Right.
retiree health, which we are now addressing.
Right. So it sounds like you wanted some language added in a 9.0 that dealt with long-term liabilities and financial planning, and made some reference to the fact that another guideline or guiding principle has to do with funding, looking for long-term ways to fund that unfunded liability. Okay.
That's what it was.
So you're probably not ready to vote on it yet.
No.
Okay.
And can I suggest that the language that Will used of addressing the issue both as a budget constraint and also trying to bring the healthcare costs under control could be a good policy statement.
My notes from last time are that number 9 was going to be dealing with funding OPEB.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Any other comments from the commission, since we're not voting on this now? I see silence. I don't see anybody leaning towards the mic. No leaders. All right, so public comment? There being none, we move on to 2.3.1.
And actually, all of those adjustments to the regular operating budget were to implement the TAs, so those are no longer relevant. So the only thing I need is approval to make those adjustments to the 12-13 budget for special revenue funds. And that was in the document we discussed this morning,
So draft motion number 1 is out altogether.
right? Because those were all TA implementation costs.
And the special revenue fund, that was for the, just to be clear, for the classification study and for the data gathering on Mr.
No, these are adjustments to the current year's budget. Those
Oh.
would be additions for next year.
Okay.
So it's simply to make sure we have enough money budgeted to cover the anticipated use of gifts and donations that we have, or just based on what we've gotten and what we've spent so far. So if you go back to document 1.2.3.1, starting with that one, for instance, we're recommending on the income to lower the projection for interest and to raise the projection for income from donations and reimbursements, because we already have nearly 100,000 in there. Then we have a recommendation to up the expenditures for gift equipment, and that's based on purchases that are being made for Sonoma and Petaluma. And we're recommending upping the programming expenditures and for, based on what's already been spent this year. We have to have enough budgeted in order to spend it. And we're recommending decreasing the furniture and fixtures expenditures by $40,000, the capital costs. Similar kinds of changes in library and branch projects, particularly in books and materials, and reducing expenditures in other areas. And something in the Cromwell bequest to cover the cost for the Petaluma circulation desk reconfiguration, which has been, their lab has approved. So, and some cleanup of the Wine Library Associates budget. So that's what we have. So that's what we're asking you to approve today. And that's for this current fiscal year.
Okay. I move that we approve the adjustments to the fiscal year 2012-2013 special revenue funds budget that were just gone over by Director Cooper.
Second.
Any comments, questions, discussion? I do have a quick one, is if the revenue for the Rhine Library is 16,000 and the expenditure is 19,000,
They already had us, if you look, there should be what they already had in, remember that there's a starting balance
Okay.
too.
all right.
And we do have a report from the wine library scheduled for the May meeting. We don't have the starting balance, but this all assumes the projected end of the year balance for this year would be $1,631.
Any other questions? I think we're in the after lunch. All right, you, Tom, do you have your,
No, the only thing it didn't make, we have a new,
Wait, we didn't vote.
no, before we vote,
Oh, he's moving on.
are you moving on to the next thing?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we need to vote for the
Oh,
motion.
okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
There are no new lab appointments because this is a special meeting.
Okay, so that'll be taken up at the next, that's fine.
Yeah, you're worried about your team.
Yeah.
Okay, and you all are making changes in your bylaws to have a youth advisor and youth.
No, I didn't realize. That has to be done? Okay, I'll get it done.
I have a quick question on behalf of the Guerneville Lab. They're thinking of videotaping their meetings as a way of dealing with the minutes issue. And they wondered if they were to do that, is there a way they can connect their videotape to the website? I mean, is that something that would be within the realm of possibilities?
Well, let me ask, Rebecca's the one who manages that because we don't go through the community.
Right, I just,
Do we pay anything for it?
Yes, we can post on the video.
Okay, so
Okay.
we can piggyback on what we're doing for this.
okay, I'll let
The
them know.
posting of the video is separate from the cost of the community media center.
Okay, and it's their chair, Peter
Andrews.
who would be setting up the video. So should he contact you, Rebecca? Okay, great, thanks.
I'm asking if there are other issues, items, because I see adjournment as next. I guess then we are adjourned.